renewable energy and that sort of thing. Is that where some future jobs are?
Well, certainly I think there are jobs there. I disagree with the president that they're high-paying jobs. If we take a look at our current energy circumstance in the country, where most of our power comes, whether it's from a coal-fired power plant in Green Bay or a nuclear power plant, whether it's coming through hydro or through oil, all those jobs typically are very high-paying jobs, union jobs, and so it seems a little bit surprising to me that the president is pushing his green agenda as a job creation. I think there are jobs there, but I disagree with the president that they're going to be real high-paying jobs. But there will be some jobs created. My preference, though, on green technology, and I'm an advocate of green technology, is that we let the market determine when it comes in, where it comes in, and how rapidly it comes in. There are a lot of things that could be doing, that we could be doing in the way of comprehensive reform on energy policy, and I have a tendency to believe that we should be doing all of them.
Besides creating jobs and energy policy, what are other issues that you think are important to the country?
Yeah, I think that the top three issues are jobs, the economy, and the national debt. And they're all kind of intertwined, aren't they? If we had more people working, there would be more tax revenue coming into the government. Our deficits would be lower. We might not get to a place where we're paying down the national debt yet, but they're all interconnected. But I've talked with thousands and thousands of people in the last year, and those are the three things. They want to see government somewhat restrained in its spending. They want to see some progress toward getting to a balanced budget, and then ultimately they need to see the national debt being paid off.
Mike in Madison wants to know, are you willing to cross party lines if Democrats have an idea that is good for the people of Wisconsin, as opposed, Mike says, to continuing the obstructionist tendency we're seeing with Republicans today?
I would agree. I think that there's a lot of obstruction going on both sides of the aisle in Washington, D.C. as people or politicians try to get to a place of power or authority. It's more about winning than it is about doing what's right for the American people. That's one of the things that got me into the race, Joy, is I'm fed up with it like most Americans are. I don't really care who gets credit for a good idea. If there's a good idea, it's a good idea. Listen, we've got 15 million Americans that are unemployed. And if we can put 15 million Americans back to work in the next 2 years, there's a very good chance that President Obama is going to get the credit. I really don't care. My take on this is we need to put 15 million Americans back to work, and those are the people I'm focused on.
Do you think it's President Obama's fault or a democratically controlled Congress's fault that 15 million people are out of work right now?
I think there's plenty of fault. There's fault to go around in a lot of places. I mean, the American people have overspent their own budgets. We look at bad policy on housing and Wall Street that have taken time over 20 or 30 years to build up. I think if you're looking for a villain, and politics always likes to find a villain, it would be easy for me to say this is President Obama's economy, and the Democrats want to say it's the Bush economy, and Republicans want to say it's the Democrats' economy. Listen, we're all in this together as Americans, and we have to find pragmatic solutions to these problems, and all the name-calling and finger-pointing is counterproductive. We need to be forward-thinking and try to resolve these problems.
What about the Obama administration's push to keep tax cuts for the middle class, but to allow the tax breaks for those making $250,000 or more, allow those tax cuts to expire in January?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the actual verbiage of the policy is. I mean, the devil's always in the details on legislation, and I'm not exactly certain on what tax credits. The tax cuts that were put in place in 2002, 2003 did help spur the economy pretty dramatically through that decade. I'm very, very cautious about putting taxes back in place. I think letting all those tax tax credits and tax reduction sunset would be a mistake for our economy. And also, I think for job creation, because most of those folks earning in that $250,000 to $650,000 per year are owners of small businesses and sub-S corporations. And I think that if you raise taxes on the job creator, you're not going to create jobs. And so I have concerns about it, but I need to see what the actual decision is on legislation first.
To the phones, and David in Appleton joins us. Hi, David.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just wanted to say I am a conservative, but I'm also a veteran who is very frustrated with how our government has handled the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm just wondering if what is his take on what we've done with Iraq and Afghanistan, and if he could promise that in the future he will refuse to fund wars or conflicts that do not have defined goals and that do not, and any where nation building is involved where it's really just not doable anyway.
Reed Ribble?
I think it's a great question. My father was a U.S. Marine, and I've got a brother who was in the Air Force. I am not a veteran, but I can tell you that you have to have a clearly defined mission, and one that has an objective at winning. I'm concerned about what's going on in Afghanistan right now. I was very disappointed when the president came out in public for a timeline. I think it's fine for military leaders to establish a strategy and even have a timeline within that strategy. What I'm opposed to is a timeline that goes public. Once the timeline goes public, you send a signal to an enemy that they can begin to attack us in twos and threes, and that's exactly what's happening. We're losing soldiers in twos and threes, and it's costing an awful lot of money. And so at this point, if the idea is to continue down the path of a specific timeline for withdrawal, then you might as well withdraw right now. As far as making a promise on declarations of war, it's a difficult thing to make a promise until I actually know what the circumstances are. I think we all want some type of commitment from our representatives on war, but I can tell you I'm not a war guy. I think we ought to be looking for ways of making sure that we don't get into war in the first time, and that means we need to have a more cohesive and strategic foreign policy to help us stay out of those wars. Let's prevent the war at the front end so that we don't have to be in them.
Thanks, David, for the call. Our guest is Reed Ribble. He is a Republican candidate for Wisconsin's 8th Congressional District, representing Northeast Wisconsin. You don't have to live in Northeast Wisconsin to call in a question, and we do have an open line for you at 1-800-642-1234, or send an email to talk@wpr.org. Reed Ribble is the owner of a roofing company in De Pere, and he is facing a former state legislator, Terry McCormick, and a current state legislator, Roger Roth, in the September 14th primary to determine who will face off against the Democratic incumbent in the 8th Congressional District, U.S. Representative Steve Kagan. 1-800-642-1234 if you have a question, or send an email to talk@wpr.org. Last week, the House of Representatives did pass a bill to provide $26 billion in aid to states to